Hello, I'm the Angry Spork. We've seen Lara Croft team up a few times with New York cop Sarah Pizzini, but today, in a website-exclusive comic, she's crossing paths with someone with a connection to the Witchblade, but is most decidedly on the other side of the law. I'm taking issue with Tomb Raider / The Darkness, so let's see if this comic makes us want to turn the page, or turn our heads. The cover seems set in the Egyptian wing of a museum, given the darklings emerging from a sarcophagus, and one wrapped in bandages, apparently for funsies. As for the title characters, Darkness seems to be getting a bit fresh, and Croft uses her 9mm to remind him no means no. If only more people could take hints that obvious. But when they don't, there's always this option. Written by Dave Wohl, with art by Billy Tan and Steve Furshow, we get quick character introductions for Lara, Jackie Estacado, and even Sarah Pizzini, even though she doesn't feature much in the story. We begin proper with the splash page of Croft surrounded by Darklings, asking them if they know what to do in a situation like the one they're in, menaced by something off-panel, and they each give a resounding no. What's to understand? You tip the DoorDash driver on the app! Narration from Lara explains how this was the first time, despite thinking everything was under control, her plans ended up going awry. I only meant to pick up a couple of things at the grocery store, but Hostess was on sale for 2 for $3. Now I've got 3 dozen boxes of cupcakes and crocodiles. I can't help myself, I can't. Honestly, I find that hard to believe, but hey, dramatic tension. And I only read the first 6 issues of her ongoing title, so moving on. We jump back an unspecified amount of time to a museum that's been the target of what police are guessing is vandalism. Ah yes, by those terrible ancient Egyptian haters, no doubt. Uh-oh. Run, Linkara, they're on to you! Much of an Egyptian exhibit has been wrecked, glass shattered, artifacts thrown about, and so forth, since the Metropolitan Museum of New York recently acquired it from the British Museum. The curator, Dr. Smith, called in Lara Croft. He's concerned that the cops aren't prioritizing the one stolen item from the crime scene, the pendant of Cleopatra. As she's the one who discovered it in the first place, Croft is determined to retrieve it. The jewelry in question apparently made its famous wearer irresistible to men, but since most people wouldn't believe in such mysticism, she goes to her friend, homicide detective Sarah Pizzini. There are so many examples of unexplained events, yet people refuse to believe in the supernatural. For the last time, Keyboard Cat was not a supernatural phenomenon. The owner was just moving its paws over the keys. While officers on the case seem to think they'll find the pendant when the thieves try selling it, Sarah has poked around, hearing rumors that it was a mafia job. And after Lara jokes about asking Tony Soprano to give it back, Sarah says she knows someone who can. Can what? Obviously she means help. But this really doesn't make grammatical sense given the previous dialogue. Also, my spell check says unexplainable isn't a word. But I digress. She knows someone that understands both the mob community and the supernatural. Plot twist. It's Dame Judi Dench. Unfortunately, she's kind of busy with her stint as an underground cage fighter, so they'll have to settle for Jackie Estacado. Soon enough, Lara is in a car with the affable but ruthless hitman, possessor of the Darkness, whom Sarah said to ignore when he started hitting on her. Hitman is more of an ironic title in this case. It turns out he never really killed anyone for the Mafia, he just flirts with a lot of women. She insists this partnership is going to remain strictly business, but he is the tenacious type, commenting on how beautiful she is, and doesn't seem the type to deal with dust and bugs, even commenting on her personal wealth. I say you keep your eyes on the road. Why? You're way nicer to look at. And this is a rental anyway. Being a rental isn't keep either of you from serious injury if you get T-boned by an SUV or careen off a bridge, you twit.
Here's an appealing fellow. In fact, they're appealing him off the sidewalk.
They arrive at the home of Tony Cugliani. Well, not quite Tony Soprano, but whatever. While Jackie is okay with a pat-down, Croft isn't. This would normally bar her entry to see their boss, but she flips out her twin pistols and freely relinquishes them as a show of good faith. The guards are awfully impressed by this and let her pass, which seems like a good way to get fired since she could be hiding more weapons in that long coat of hers. In any event, They're led inside, where Jackie notes how increasingly impressed with her he's becoming, and she tells him to keep his mind on the job or else face a whoopins. They meet with Tony by his pool. He's already aware of why they're here, and he strongly insists he doesn't know anything. Yeah, that's not suspicious at all. Lara, however, gets in close, despite the armed goons, and can tell that not only does he know who has the pendant and what it can do, but that he's scared as well.
What are you, a shrink? You'd be surprised what you learn about the human psychosis when you're pillaging ancient ruins and battling mystic malefactors. Once you've time-traveled and fought a T-Rex, you've basically completed most nationally recognized psychology courses.
When guards get antsy enough to start drawing their weapons, Estacado begins making excuses for her, that she's nutty like everyone else in England.
Is that racist?
Yes.
A little bit.
No.
But in this atypical panel progression, going down, then to the left, then down to the right, Cugliani starts sobbing that the Brit is right on the money. Or pound, perhaps. Quid? Anyway, the job was pulled for one Dino Barata, who'd read about the artifact, what it allegedly did, and hoped it would help his marriage to the not-so-hot Maria. But the pendant has led to infighting among Barata's men, and Lara promises to take care of this, with Jackie adding that they'll both end it. And it's Jackie that the boss addresses.
Good, 'cause I still owe you for what your uncle did to my cousin. But this'll square it. And you're lucky too. What kind of monster outright lies and gives a 1-star Yelp review on a perfectly good fusion restaurant that was premium sushi in those burritos, and you know it?
After a silent drive to Barata's place, Jackie remembers which cousin Tony was talking about, and it was one that Estacado personally took out. Lara's not interested in his dreadful career, and while the hitman enjoys Lara's accent when she says whacked,
Well, I must say that whacking, whatever it is, sounds most disagreeable.
he clarifies he's only assigned bad guys to kill. I don't know, that wouldn't exactly reassure me considering he's still involved in organized crime. Sure, a freelance assassin or a competitor killing innocents would be considered bad to them, I'm sure, just as anyone else. But they might also see a cop investigating their illegal operations or someone informing on them to the feds to clear their own guilty conscience bad as well, wouldn't they? At the very least, the potential is there. When they finally arrive, Croft had intended to go in alone, but the womanizer insists on joining her. Since he's not leaving, she informs him to stay behind and avert his eyes when he's told, since the property is littered with dead bodies of men that fell under the pendant's thrall, and she'd rather neither of them meet the same fate. They head inside to more carnage, emphasizing the dangerous power of the item they seek, when they finally catch up to a room with 2 men dead on the floor, literally at each other's throats, and a woman standing nearby. Lara tells Jackie to amscray, but it's too late, as he notes how the woman looks. She turns around and we see Maria, dress torn, what I assume is someone else's blood on her shoulder, tears in her eyes, and the pendant of Cleopatra around her neck, as she begs for help. You know, she's clearly been traumatized, witnessed the men around her slaughter each other under the influence of an artifact she doesn't understand, so it would not feel right for me to joke about how she looks like one of the Cabbage Patch Kids in their mid-20s. Ah, dang it! However, through Jackie's eyes, with green hearts behind them like St. Patrick's Day themed decorations for St. Valentine's Day? Anyway, he sees not a plain, distressed woman, but a more conventionally attractive, sultry-looking one. Unfortunately, Jackie fails to see the tiny asterisk pointing out that what he's seeing has been altered by photo manipulation.
God is punishing me.
You had to read the works of James Tiny in the Fourth too, huh? Been there, sister. Maria, for some reason, can't get the pendant off, even after her husband was killed by his own men, who then turned on each other, all for her. Lara attempts to do just that, end this whole menace once and for all, but she's stopped and thrown aside by Jackie, having transformed into his darkness form. His darklings emerge and surround Lara, a little disappointed that she's not scared of them, and they seem to be fixated on her guns. Whether they mean her actual firearms or her chest is rather debatable. Sure, they're demon imps, but when Jackie orders them to kill Croft for bumming him out in front of his new lady friend, which he thinks is one word apparently, one darkling is perplexed by the command, noting that Lara is hot, yet the boss is more into Maria, and since he's unaffected by the effects of the pendant, He calls her a pig, and Lara promptly smacks him for the remark. Lara Croft, sexy advocate for the aesthetically impaired. Jackie didn't care for that insult either, and decides to attack his minions as well, bringing us to where we began, in more ways than one, as this panel seems to be the first page, just reduced in size and with the dialogue removed. Maria begs Estacado to stop, but he's pretty intent on carrying his executions through. Lara gets her guns back, but they don't do much good against the darkness's tendrils, like one of the imps said. Now, at the very least, it looks like it broke the wrapping restraining her, which lets her perform a swinging chandelier kick to Jackie's chest. So that's something, right? She throws one of the little gremlins at Maria to get the pendant, just before Croft gets ensnared by the tendrils, in danger of being suffocated. The Darkling struggles to remove the artifact, but eventually the chain breaks, and Jackie seems to fall back, maybe from the force of the darkness receding back into him. Looking nonplussed, he asks what's going on, like he doesn't remember what he did. The comic ends with him asking if they got the necklace or whatever, and Lara assuring him that yes, it's all over now. That was Tomb Raider / The Darkness, a short story that may have been more fun if I knew more about this magically enhanced mafioso. From this story, there's not much I can get from Jackie Estacado. I can see why Lara described him as charming in an ignorant, moronic kind of way, but moreover, that strikes me like the kind of pretty boy lunkhead who you're entertained by as a fictional character, but not someone you'd likely tolerate for very long in real life. Imagine how different that 70s show would have been if Michael Kelso had ethereal powers and a platoon of tiny goblins at his command. Don't get me wrong, I'm sure there's more to him than what's presented here, but this story, that waits until the third to last page to show us his powers, doesn't really inspire much interest for me. The premise is at least very good, that Lara needs to retrieve an artifact from the mob, and Jackie is her way into that world. But when she willingly gives over her guns to be let in without a pat-down search, and merely stares down a mobster to get him to fess up to the chaos that's erupted, it seems like the hitman's usefulness only went so far. Maybe a cardboard cutout of Fat Tony from The Simpsons would have sufficed.
I am not so much disappointed as I am blinded with rage.
A lot of Tony references in this episode. Anyway, I get that this was an exclusive to Top Cow's website, and it wouldn't surprise me if that was a factor in it being 14 pages, but it really could have used a few more. And not just to explain why, if the power to be irresistible to men was known and believed by the mobsters, they didn't think to send some trustworthy women in their families to get the necklace back. Though maybe they were concerned that one of those women might be tempted to wear the necklace themselves and just continue the violence. A different writer might have taken the opportunity this premise offered and maybe provide some kind of commentary about the perception of beauty, though maybe it would have felt hollow coming from the notoriously sexualized Lara Croft and man-pretty Jackie Estacado. Though they didn't seem to bother with an explanation as to why Maria's husband needed magic to fix his marriage. I mean, not to sound shallow, but why did he marry her if he wasn't attracted to her in that way? What happened that jeopardized their relationship that he took a leap on magic, which is earlier stated in the comic to be something most people don't really believe in? But more importantly, why couldn't Maria just take the pendant off herself? Could she not reach behind her neck because of a genetic disorder in her shoulders? Was there some enchantment that prevented the wearer from removing it? Give us something! And rather annoyingly, the story just kind of ends. Kind of like that Simpsons episode I reviewed in this season's premiere. It feels like there was more to do in terms of wrapping up, but necklace comes off, Jackie doesn't remember attacking Lara and his Darklings. That's it. It never pays off Croft's narration at the beginning, because this doesn't feel any more dire than the Witchblade crossovers. It builds up the tension, ends the threat, and whereas some stories give some kind of cooling off period with their endings, showing and telling what happens to those involved, what'll become of the MacGuffin, maybe one last rejection of lustful advances, this one forgoes any of that completely. There were moments where the dialogue seemed like the exchange between the two characters was missing a bubble or two, but that and Sarah's awkward sentence in her one-page appearance are about the biggest problems in that regard. And speaking of, they've really gotten friendly despite their interactions not really building up that friendship. It's as if they got to know each other in between adventures and we, the reader, just need to accept it. Almost as bad as a certain writer I could name a second time. almost as bad. I liked the art fine enough, some panels feeling a little congested perhaps, and this was definitely much cheesecakier than Croft's adventures with her police friend. We see the classic outfit from the Tomb Raider games, if with a long coat added, but there's definitely more skin shown, more cleavage, and more consistently form-fitting apparel, and moments where, it looks like someone turned the thermostat down, let's say. Heck, even in the panel where she's being smothered, the position of Lara's hands kind of make it look like she's lifting up a shirt from over her tank top, like in one of those Gone Wild videos that I don't think exist anymore. I get that pairing of the adventurous Lara Croft and Top Cow's magically enabled characters seems like a really good fit, and it is, theoretically. In execution, this comic continues their trend of being fairly entertaining, but kind of losing some opportunities. But maybe it's just not for me. I'm the Angry Spork, and man, have I got issues.